All right, we're going to look at forms of government, federalism, unitary, and confederacy. Before we get started on that, I want to do just a little bit of review because I'm going to use some of these terms and they can be a little confusing. When we look back at what a state is, states have four characteristics. They have population, they have territory, they have government, and they have sovereignty. So when the United States was first created after the Revolutionary War, we were a confederation under the Articles of Confederation. So before we write this new Constitution, we called ourselves the United States because literally at that time, each state was independent and it was sovereign, but those 13 independent sovereign states united to give this new government that we created after the Revolution some powers. So really the individual states in the United States, although we still call them states, they lack sovereignty. So they're more like local governments that have power, that can make decisions and rules for their own individual location, like Indiana would be considered a local government. I have a couple of maps here. The one on the left is in blue are those countries or those states. Once again, these are sovereign states that have decided to come together and create the European Union, which is really kind of a confederacy. So that's the European Union on the left. On the right, obviously, is the United States. We are a federal system of government. So the difference between our 50 states is they are not sovereign, and those on the left that are part of the European Union, they are sovereign. I use the map on the right of the United States because we're also going to talk about a unitary form of government here in a moment, and those states that are colored are actually all larger than the example that I'm going to use, which is the United Kingdom, so which includes England or Great Britain, if you're familiar with that. Each one of these states that is in a color, they're actually larger than what the whole entire state or country of Great Britain is. So the first one we're going to talk about is a federal government. And a federal government is a government that has divided pretty much equally power between the federal government and the state or local governments. The federal government, anything that the federal government does, it applies to all of the states. So when the federal government makes laws, they apply to everyone. Then on the other hand, there on the right-hand side, each individual state or each individual local government, depending on what the country that has a federal system calls them, they're able to manage their own public health and safety in their states. They can tax, they make state laws, they enforce laws. And then if there is a conflict according to our Constitution, and we look at the supremacy clause found in Article 6, if there is a conflict, then we have to follow the federal law. Confederacy, the central government is accountable to the member states. The member states have the ultimate authority. So in this case, these aren't considered local governments. They're actually sovereign countries. And so they created this central government, and once again, if we looked and compared the size of most of the countries that are in the European Union, most of these countries are the size of some of our states. And so as you travel from one state to the next state, they each had their own currency. So you would have to, every time you would cross state lines or the country's lines, you'd have to get different money so that you could purchase things. So they came together for some national security measures, and they came together so that they could some free trade across borders and a uniform currency, so that made things a lot easier for them to do business there in Europe. And I've listed the countries here that are part of the European Union. There are, I believe, 44 that are part of that, but these are some of those that are part of the European Union. England was part of it, and they have voted themselves, or Great Britain was part of it, and they voted within their countries to exit that. So Great Britain is no longer part of the European Union. And a unitary form of government is where they have one central government. I don't know why I have government twice there, but one central government. And Great Britain here, the country here with the British flag, is a unitary form. And once again, when you look at it and compare it to the sizes that we talked about, it's much smaller than a lot of the states that we have here in the United States. There's really no need to have different levels of government. So you don't need to have a federal system like ours, where we have, because we're such a large state or a large country, we need to divide that power up, because what happens in California is different than what the needs of Florida, which is different than the needs of New York, which is different than the needs of Montana or Indiana. So here in the United Kingdom, it's not necessary to have those layers just because it's so small. So really, the necessity for the federal system and the Confederacy is just because of the sheer size of them. And it's just a matter of, does most of the power lie with the states in terms of a confederacy, or are the federal government and the state governments going to share power like we see in a federal government? And so we have a review here. Unitary, power rests in the central government. Now I need to emphasize here that when I say the power rests in the central government, that does not mean it lies with one person. Just because you're a unitary form of government does not mean you are a dictatorship. It means you are small and you don't need layers of government. One centrally located government can take care of the concerns of the whole entire state. In a confederacy, there is agreement among states. Again, these are sovereign states, to create a limited central government. The central government has no control over the states or region. These states are sovereign. And then the federal system, which is what the United States is what we are, power is divided between the central government and the states or the local regions. The central government has some control over those. And once again, if you have these conflicts, we need to have a tiebreaker. So the Supremacy Clause is the tiebreaker, and it says if there is a conflict between the national government and the state government, as long as it is a power that is in the Constitution that is given to the national government, then the national government would trump the states.